All right, we get started. Sorry, I was posting the link on Facebook. Make sure it posted on Twitter. All right, we are good to go. Take a look how the market looks pre-market. Actually, looks pretty good. What I'm seeing here is basically the same thing we went over yesterday. I told you guys that the 4-hour falling wedge on SPY was looking pretty bullish. We did break out of that falling wedge yesterday. We did have a bull div come in as well to confirm that low. If you guys were in the Discord, I told you guys that it was very likely going to retest the wedge one more time and then pop. That's exactly what it did. This was, what was that? Yes, was that yesterday or the day before? It came down and retested the wedge that one final time. We actually bought the low here. We sold some premium. We basically sold some puts right at the bottom. So very, very nice. I also added on to my Q's position as well. So came down to the wedge. We added on, popped up, came back for almost a little miniature retest there, and now we're starting to rise. Didn't seem like it had much of a reaction to the debates. I think for the most part, the market is unsure on kind of who is going to win. So we'll probably get priced in closer to the election, but right now the market's not really pricing in either one of their victories. I think if anything, they're pricing in a Trump victory. If you look at the stocks that will do well under Biden, like solar, a lot of the energy stuff. So like oil will do bad, natural gas will probably do bad, solar will do better, stuff like that. Where is it? We have like TAN here is a solar ETF. This has been going down for the past couple days, so looks like they might be pricing a little bit of a Trump victory, but nothing too obvious just yet. But yeah, so the 4-hour falling wedge breaking out to the upside. You have a little bit of resistance coming in, 50-day, the 50 moving average on the 4-hour. Once you get through that, should be a pretty easy move up to like 3,500. Basically the same pattern that we're seeing on the Qs. You actually just now started to break out of the Qs wedge, so it's lagging behind ES a little bit. You have ES breaking out for what, like 5 candles. NASDAQ is just now putting in its first candle breakout. So a little bit of a lag, but I think it can get to like 11.9 by next week, 11 or close to 12,000 by next week as well. As long as this wedge holds. So watch that wedge, obviously. If you find any support, any value below that wedge, pretty bearish. If we go back to SPY, same thing as ES, basically, you were retesting that neckline pretty much to the tick, and now we're bouncing off of it. So it looks pretty good. Same thing with the Qs. Came down, retest the neckline. Now we're starting to bounce. So everything looks pretty bullish. Even IWM looks pretty bullish. Looks like you want to fill that coronavirus gap. So you would have to push up to like 168 to fill that coronavirus gap. So keep an eye on that. Dow Jones also looks pretty bullish. You had a rising wedge break to the downside, but now we're finding support right on these pivots. Looks pretty good. All indexes are pretty bullish. Couple of things that I'm watching. We're not watching AMD anymore. We closed that trade. DraftKings we're still keeping an eye on. 2 scenarios here. Falls down to like $40. We could look for a support there, or if you break above the 15-minute cloud here, which you're currently testing, and the cloud starts to flip green, so I'd like this thing to probably pull back, consolidate, maybe push higher. The cloud would be flipping green, and then this would be kind of like an entry right around there. So we're going to wait for confirmation on that, because if you zoom out, this has not gotten above the cloud basically since the failure. You had one little trap right here, and nuked, another trap, nuked. So it doesn't look very good. But it does look like it's gaining some value here. Like I said, if it pulls back, you'll be above the cloud. Wait for the cloud to kind of shift green, and then you would climb up. So watch that. Another thing that I'm watching here is Nvidia. You have a 4-hour falling wedge. This one's not as clean as the SPY and Qs one, but it's still there. You just kind of have to force the drawing. But you are finding some support. You have a 1-hour bull div coming in. Momo's predicting a bottom. You have a pivot as well. So as long as you find some value today or Monday, you should break above this wedge, and it should look very good. I sold some premium on Nvidia, so we're keeping an eye on that. Walmart pulling back to support, but not looking too great. You would have to hold this support, bounce up, break yesterday's high, then you would start to look better. So keep an eye on that. Starbucks actually had a really nice day yesterday. We're still holding my butterfly trap. It has to get to around $90 for me to make money, and we're almost there. So if it has a green day today, we should be green on that position. So we'll keep an eye on that. I really like yesterday's candle. You're kind of engulfing the past 2 days. You didn't find any value really down here towards the low of the trend for the bears. I mean, you found some support and pushed up. So you found value for the bulls. You did not find any value for the bears. So this should be pretty bullish. If we go to like a lower time frame, you have like an inverse head and shoulders here, and you are breaking this little micro downtrend. So looks pretty good. I really like this inverse head and shoulders because you're right on that pivot. Typically, when you have pivots as like your shoulder or your neckline, it's a pretty high strike rate head and shoulders. So watch that. I think that looks pretty good for today. Neo is putting in like a little bear flag here, pulling back to resistance. So if we don't start to push up on the pre-market, I'll probably sell some premium on this to add back onto my diagonal. Right now, I closed my sell side yesterday for about a 70% gain. So we are currently naked on Neo. So if Neo starts to fail downward or it starts to push up really hard, we'll sell some premium on that. Intel, I'm not watching. You had really bad earnings, so nuke down again. Our SQM shares have been flying. This is actually my most green position right now, and it's funny, I don't even have options on this. We're only playing shares, but we're up almost 20% on these shares. Really good trade on that. All the tech stocks are basically still in the same area that they've been all week. No real direction shifts on these. You had Microsoft pulling back to the range high. I did want to sell premium on this, sell some puts, but you have earnings coming up, so I hate selling premium into earnings because if there's a volatility spike, then you get killed. So I try to avoid selling premium into earnings, but if there was no earnings, I would definitely sell some puts here. Looks pretty bullish. You have a daily buy signal. You get back above like 216. Should be pretty good. Now, Apple is still retesting this inverse head and shoulders neckline. You don't have any confirmation, no strong bounce just yet. As I told you guys, you want to get above like 119, and then you should go higher into 126. But right now, it's still just kind of holding on that support, no confirmation. Facebook, there is is it a 4-hour or 1 hour? It's a 4-hour. You have a 4-hour pivot here that's holding very nicely. If you hold this 4-hour pivot and start to climb, watch that 282 resistance. You get above that, then you should be seeing that 290. Okay, so break above 282, 290 would be your obvious target. Keep an eye on that 4-hour pivot right around 277. Netflix is also sitting on a pivot, so watch Netflix daily here. You hold above 482, and you start gaining back above the daily high on Thursday, then this should start to push into this gap here, okay? So watch that gap fill right around 524, and you should be able to get at least a partial gap fill if you do break the high of yesterday. So watch that for next week. If you do break the pivot, that would be the obvious exit, and you should push down into 458. So watch these lower levels as support. Your local support would be that pivot. As long as you hold that, you could get a partial gap fill. Keep an eye on that. Amazon still hanging out right around that range high. It's pretty bearish when it does this, but you are starting to find a little bit of support. So if you do climb here, watch this little zone right here. You could put in a deviation, little dead cat bounce, and then you could push lower back into the range levels. So keep an eye on that. I wouldn't be super bullish on this, but it doesn't look too bearish just yet. Tesla, we had earnings on Tesla, one of the most disappointing earnings we've ever seen on Tesla. It basically did not move at all. So we're still keeping an eye on Tesla. It has to get above 450 or there's still no trade on Tesla. It's just going to slowly bleed out into 413, into 375. It has to get above 450 to see that 475 area. But that is it for my watch list. If you guys have anything you want to take a look at, let me know. We're going to move on to the call scanner here. Take a look at my scanners. So we have PayPal number 1, 100,000 calls, not a whole lot. You have GPS, what is that? Oh, that's Gap. Take a look at Gap. So Gap actually had a decent breakout yesterday. You had some buy signals come in on the OTS, basically called the bottom, and then you pushed up almost 14%. So pretty big move on Gap here. Put in a 4-hour pivot too. Yeah, 1-hour pivot as well. Yeah, a lot of support down at that level. Not sure why it moved up so quickly. You must have had some news because there was no earnings here. What else is on the scanner? We have PayPal. PayPal, no real clear signal here. Maybe a little bit more of a pullback. And then this could be a cup and handle. And then you break out of that handle, push higher. So keep an eye on that. You do have earnings coming up though, so watch out for that. You could pull back into earnings. Maybe if there's good earnings, then you shoot up. But overall, looks pretty good. Nice little micro uptrend. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. What else do we have here? We have GM Motors. Still playing out that cup and handle that we talked about. Massive breakout. I did read about how they are still in talks with Nikola, which I think is a horrible idea, but they're still in talks with Nikola for their EV. You're retesting this massive consolidation, this distribution that we saw back in 2018, 2019. So you have a lot of resistance coming up. You start to break above like $40, 41, 40. You have a lot of room to run back up into like 46 pivot. So keep an eye on that. But right now, we are definitely testing a big area of resistance. So you could start nuking at any point in this zone. We don't have any weekly pivots. We actually are testing one right now. We have a weekly pivot that we're currently testing. Then we have one around 41. Keep an eye on those. I wouldn't enter here if you haven't entered already. I did talk about this pivot test yesterday, so you could have taken a little short time frame trade off that pivot test. and then it basically ran all day once it tested that pivot. So looks pretty good. Sonos next on the scanner. Let's take a look at it. Sonos putting in a pretty nice high here, but you do have a bear div coming in on the 15 minutes. Daily looks pretty good. You put in a nice little kind of bull flag here, bullish triangle. Bounced off that pivot, broke out. You still have a little bit of resistance here. But if you do break out, you have a very obvious target here on the gap fill, which would be around $17. So keep an eye on that. You do have earnings coming up though. I do like this gain in momentum. Look at the momentum starting to pick up. So as that momentum climbs, you're going to flip bullish here. And then you can see on the Momo, the shading right here, that's telling you that you're finding a top. You're in kind of a bullish trend. So you're still in a bullish trend. This pullback to the pivot was a trap. So the bears were getting trapped here. And then the bear trap was sprung. And now we have the bears being liquidated, basically. Twitter, yeah, we can take a look at Twitter. So Twitter has a very similar chart on the Momo as well. You had a rising wedge, break to the downside, bounced off that pivot. You also had a buy signal on the OTS, and then you started to climb. So the bears were being trapped, and then that gap up basically capitulated the bears. So now we are pretty bullish. This little pullback here was actually very strong. You pulled back into that previous trend of that rising wedge, and then you bought right back up. So my targets here to the upside were 50-50 and then 51.67. You're already hitting one of them. So now you have a second target. Look at where you topped out, right on that target, pretty much to the penny. And now we have another target coming up around 51.67. So keep an eye on that. What was this target? Was that a pivot? What do I have marked out here? Yeah, these are pivots, I believe. Yeah, we have weekly levels, which I think are also daily pivots. Pretty good. A lot of resistance coming in, but it definitely does look like it wants to fill these targets. What's next on our call scanner? We have LVS, Las Vegas Sands. Nice little gap up there. I believe that is an earnings gap. That's actually impressive. Seeing that it gapped up on earnings, even though their earnings should have been very bad because of the coronavirus. Very interesting. I don't really see a trade here. It's just kind of in a massive range. You're right around the middle of the range, so no clear trade. The weekly actually looks really good. Pull back to a pivot, bounce, pull back to a pivot. You weren't able to test it. Bulls came in early. Nice little gain in momentum here. So it looks like in the next few weeks this should start to climb. You do have a little bit of a resistance coming in on the 50-week moving average, but once you break through that, you should be able to climb. Smile Direct Club is the next on the call scanner. I haven't seen this name in a while. We are failing a weekly pivot, but this uptrend is pretty solid. I wouldn't trade it here because of that weekly pivot. You also have a daily pivot above you as well. Maybe a little pullback or a gain above that pivot would be tradable. You can see topping out right on the daily pivot and then right on the weekly as well. So definitely a lot of resistance. You would not want to trade this right where it is. Let's take a look at the high-a-day scanner. We got a couple names here. Carvana. Let's see, what's it doing? Not really doing anything. AMD. AMD is starting to climb a little bit. Ali, not doing much. Bunch of no-name companies. ENPH starting to slowly climb. Yeah, the only company that actually looks like it's getting decent volume is AMD. The add volume to this chart. You guys can't see this. Is my YouTube not... You guys can see me on YouTube, right? My restream says my YouTube is not working. You confirm that. Restream says... Oh, we're good. But I don't know why it's saying that. You guys have any tickers we want to look at? We got about 7 minutes left until we close up the morning stream. No big block trades coming in today. We have MT getting a small block trade, ET getting a big block trade, but it's not really a big name company, so nothing that we look at. CVAC is actually getting a lot of volume here in the morning. I'm going to give you guys a little treat today. I'm going to stay live for a couple more minutes after the opening session. I'm going to call out some things that are gapping up, and then we are going to close it down after that. Something that I typically do in Discord. FISV, let's take a look. FISV, no real trade on this, just a massive range. See the weekly. Yeah, weekly is just stalled out on that pivot. So it's really scary. I think this would be a longer term trade if you broke out of that pivot around like 106. Anything below that's kind of sketchy to trade. Not a chart that I would typically trade. You have earnings coming up as well, so definitely not a chart that I would trade. If you guys like the stream, make sure to hit that follow button on Twitch or subscribe on YouTube. I do appreciate all the follows, subscriptions. You guys have been very supportive lately on the YouTube and the Twitch, so I appreciate you guys a lot. Try to provide as much content as I can. I know you guys enjoy the morning streams, so we're going to continue to do these for some time. Starbucks is actually up pretty big pre-market here. Look at that. Not doing too bad. You're almost at 90. I need Starbucks to get to 90 by the end of today, and we'll make a lot of money on the butterfly. Right now, we're down on the butterfly, I think like 30 or 40%. We need that to start climbing. ES is holding this pivot here. This looks like a ascending triangle almost. Looks like we could have a bullish day for sure. The one thing to watch here, let me actually go over this before the market opens. One thing to watch. I do this every day. I've been calling out lottos in Discord and they've been paying off beautifully. I called out a lotto yesterday. I didn't take it because I'm really bad at if I'm looking at something and it starts running before I'm able to get in. I hate chasing it, so I don't get in. I called out this lotto on SPY 343 basically at the low of the day yesterday. It was at 120. By the time I had my order ready to go, it was at 150. So I was like, I can't chase that. Already up like 30%. It went to like three something. It was like $3 and something yesterday. So we could have tripled our money in a few hours. So that would have been something that would have been good to FOMO into. But I'm really bad at that. I try to be disciplined and not FOMO into things. So if I'm looking at something and it runs while I'm trying to get filled, I usually don't chase it. But going back to what I was saying, so if we watch the pre-market session here on ES, this gives us very key levels, right? So notice how we are really close to the pre-market high. If this breaks the pre-market high here, it's very likely to continue higher. But this doesn't really give you a good lotto. So typically, if you're looking for lottos, you want to look for whatever gives you the best risk to reward. Right now, shorting this would give you a better risk to reward, but it would be a lower probability. If you want to take the higher probability trade, you would obviously long this because it looks bullish. But with that said, if we break the pre-market high here, you should continue higher. If we break the pre-market high and then fail back into the pre-market session, then you have a very high chance to see the pre-market value area low. So you could take a 3-4-5 SPY lotto for the end of the day. Or you could be very ballsy and take a 3-4-4 lotto by the end of the day. That's only if you break and then reclaim. That would be a trap. You'd be trading a deviation. You could, if price breaks VWAP, you could go for these lottos. That would be a little risky. If price breaks the pre-market high, you could take this long, maybe a 3-4-7 long. But that would be a pretty low risk reward. You'd have to be careful on that. But those would be your only lotto scenarios for right now. Very bullish pre-market session. This P-shape profile is very bullish. But all right, here we're about to get the bell. I'm gonna call out some things that are gapping, and then we're gonna call it a stream. All right, there's the bell. So a couple of penny stocks that are gapping: ZDGE, Zedge, massive gap on this thing. Gap on earnings. Keep an eye on that. Dogs, DOGZ. I'm gonna join Discord here while I'm calling these out. I'm still streaming, guys. I'm gonna call out a few gaps and then we're gonna end the stream. If you guys want to trade penny stocks, just calling out a few penny stocks. ZDGE and DOGZ are a couple of ones pumping. BIME is another penny stock moving here. Pretty big gap on that as well. Go to the 1 minute on these. Next penny stock is SCKT. Massive gap on earnings. Call out a few more and then we'll call this MDGS. Another penny stock moving. They're all pretty shitty companies, so understand that. I think the best one is, what is that, Zedge one? DDGE, it's kind of hard to say that. Keep an eye on that one. Alright guys, I'm gonna end the stream on that. I appreciate you guys being here for the morning stream. I'll be back around 3 p.m. Eastern. You guys are in Discord. I'll be in Discord for the entire day. So I'll see you guys in Discord. You guys have a good one.